right, welcome back in, you guys. We got One Piece chapter 1155, full spoilers here with us today. And yeah, this was a chapter. I think that's the best way to summarize it, right? It was a chapter, guys. So, real quick, but if you have not read the spoilers for yourself though yet, I will be linking it down below, as well as typing it out piece by piece, so you can check it out there and follow along, or read it and just get out of here. But yes, I'm here today just to talk about the main bullet points, the ones that really caught my attention, and I just want to have that good old discussion with you guys. So, getting right into it, we learn what the leakers meant when they said that Rocks D Xebec is a unique swordsman. Yesterday, we talked about devil fruits, we talked about haki blast, we even talked about a potential black blade. But here today, we learn that Rocks' sword attacks are known for sending the surrounding objects flying as if it was due to the impact of a giant hammer or a cannon blast. That is from the narrator, mind you. That's not somebody saying it. That is the narrator saying it. So what the heck is going on here? Is this a devil fruit? Is it a mixture of a devil fruit and a sword? Is it Rocks imbuing his sword with Conqueror's haki, kind of like Joy Boy's not? I don't know. I think this is really strange right away. It could even be a unique sword, right? Maybe his sword just does that. I know people don't like it when I bring up Naruto, but this does remind me of one of the 7 swords of the mist, right? It just has a really crazy, unique power out of nowhere. And yeah, Rocks is that kind of fighter. He does not display a devil fruit in this chapter. Does that mean that Rocks doesn't have a devil fruit? No. Does it mean that Rocks can't get a devil fruit later? No. But right now, it looks like Rocks is just a swordsman. You know, he's a fighter kind of like Roger. And I like that. You know, I like where Oda's going with this. Because even though he is just a, quote, swordsman, he's a different swordsman. You know, he truly is unique. So picking up where we left off last chapter, we see Rocks and Loki's initial interaction. Loki saying, hey, boy, you're really injured. Why don't you go home and call your daddy, right? Bring King Harald back here to Elbaf since he's currently on his expedition. Loki says, no, I'm not going to do that. You look weak. I'm going to attack you. Loki attacks Rocks D Xebec, and Rocks blocks the attack, which is when we get the whole narrator box about Rocks' unique sword. And right when he does that, that is when we get the Reverie flashback from 8 years prior. And we see Rocks ended up, we talked about this yesterday, but he ended up kidnapping 5 kings and or queens. We don't know why he did this, but here in the full spoilers, we learn why. He did it so that he could have a bargaining chip against Emu. What? Huh? So the fact that Rocks D Xebec did this means that he knew of Emu prior to coming to Marie's Rod. That's my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong. But as it stands, that's what I think about this situation. He kidnapped 5 kings and queens, and then he went all the way to the flower room to negotiate with Emu. So yeah, he knew that Emu existed before coming here. He had a plan in mind, and of course, this plan doesn't work. Emu's response in this chapter is that the lives of mere kings cannot be used as bargaining chips against Mu. And Rocks says, I thought as much. But the Holy Land is a mess right now. We see that Rocks was sitting on the ground near Emu. So yeah, Rocks isn't even trying to fight Emu, which is crazy, by the way, right? As much as this chapter is Rocks gas, it's also Emu gas in a way, right? Because Rocks, despite being this top tier fighter, one of the pinnacles of the verse, he's not trying to fight Emu for what he wants. He's simply sitting down with the pistol saying, hey, I have your kings. You want to work with me? And then Emu's like, no, forget that. And yeah, to me at least, it really seems like both characters here are completely aura farming. So we go on and we see that a woman servant is kneeled down next to Emu, and this servant looks like Gunko, but this character is wearing something similar to a nun habit with a mask covering her mouth. So the leakers go as far to say that this character is Gunko. Personally, I'm really skeptical. You know, I like to keep the door ajar at least. So I'm not really confident in that yet. Because the clothing is just so different, right? We've seen Gunko in robes. We've seen Gunko in her regular outfit. Would Oda really give Gunko a third outfit despite us already knowing who she is? I don't think so. Personally, I think this could just be a brand new female Holy Knight. but maybe that's just me. But either way, we know that Holy Knights do work for Emu anyways, so having a brand new Holy Knight here, even just having Gunko wearing different clothing here with Emu, I think both are fine. I think that one is kind of like a pick your poison kind of situation. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think this character is Gunko, or no, do you think the nun outfit lady is somebody brand new entirely? Maybe that's a thing. Like Emu says, hey, if you come into my room, you gotta put on the nun outfits. Maybe that's Emu's fetish. Who doesn't have a nun fetish, am I right? So, we go on, and we see that Emu is staring at Rocks, while Rocks is very fiercely threatening Emu. Brother, that's nuts. I was talking about how Emu, when they saw Sabo, it was literally on sight, right? Emu saw Sabo, boom, tail attack, transform, let's all go kill Sabo. But for Rocks, Emu isn't trying to kill him. I wonder why. Does Emu not think he's worth the effort? Does Emu just see Rocks as so inferior to him that there's no reason to fight at all? Like it's like stepping on an ant? Or can Emu not fight right now? I think there's a lot of questions that come out of this, right? Why would you let such a heinous villain loose upon the world when you can stop them right here and now? I get what Emu's saying, right? The lives of kings do not matter, but you could easily stop all of this. You can easily clear up the mess, Emu. I don't know. I guess if I had to use common sense here or, some sort of logic, I could say that if Emu were to defeat Rocks D Xebec, how would they even report this in the news? Like, hey, Rocks went up to the Holy Land and kidnapped 5 kings, and then, a strong character killed Rocks D Xebec. Who was it? To be continued. Maybe that's it. But we have seen the WG use propaganda before, like when they said that Smoker beat Crocodile in Alabasta, but we know it was Luffy. So they could just lie. So yeah, I'm not too sure why Emu doesn't do anything here. Especially when Rocks D Xebec threatens Emu. Because Rocks leaves after he realizes that he can't deal with Emu, and he says, one day, I will come back here to the flower room. And that's pretty much it, And the narrator piles onto this. And the narrator says that unlike anything before, and for the first time, someone had managed to get into the deepest part of the Holy Land, into the Room of Flowers. And this man revealed himself as an admirer of Davy Jones. And that was all he did. He knew what he could not do, but he did leave with those parting words. Okay, it's funny because, coming off of last chapter, maybe I had the wrong assumption, but to be fair, One Piece power scaling, it's always like that, right? One character gets feats, another character gets more feats, yada yada. But last chapter, I was like, yo, Rocks is that guy. Rocks seems like a powerhouse. How would he fare against Emu? Well, now we know. Emu is just on a different level completely. And I wonder, right? Because we're in a flashback still, because Rocks hasn't died yet, does Rocks go back to the Holy Land, to the Flower Room? Does he keep this promise? Or does Rocks die before they can show back up in front of Emu? Or maybe this is where Blackbeard steps in. Blackbeard, carrying Rocks' will, goes to the Flower Room and says, hey, Emu, I told you I'd be back. Because that'd be kind of crazy. So we go on, and we see that after Rocks leaves the Flower Room, and as he's trying to flee Marie Joie, that is when he ends up running into King Harald. It's funny, last week, Herald was like, yeah, I spotted this maniac, I spotted the guy who just caused a ruckus up in the Holy Land. And I'm like, oh yeah, Herald probably saw him from afar, Herald probably saw him from a distance. That's not the case. Herald clashed with Rocks D Xebec up there. Yeah, that's right, they clashed. Their clash was a conqueror's haki clash that the leakers described as similar to Roger versus Whitebeard and Luffy versus Kaido. It was a no-contact clash. Not surprised, right? I think if I were to hold a poll on this, 99% of people would say that Rocks D Xebec and King Harald have advanced conqueror's haki. I don't think that was ever up for debate, really. But just seeing it, just reading those words, it still catches you off guard. You're still shocked by all of this. Or at least that's how I feel about it, right? It's one thing to know and assume something. It's another thing to get it confirmed and right in front of you, man. So, The narrator explains that after these two strangers clashed, it wiped out everybody in a 5-kilometer distance. 5 kilometers? Brother, the Holy Land isn't that big. You know, hey, low be for me to say, you know, we don't have the exact measurements, but the Holy Land isn't that big. Are you telling me that everybody at the Reverie got knocked out? Everybody at the Reverie got blown away? Is that what happened here? And, you know, I know people are saying, hey, what about the Holy Knights? You know, where are they? You know, where's Garling? Where's, you know, the Holy Knights of the past? But, you know, based off of Emu's reaction, it seems like the Holy Knights don't care. Because we have that, quote, Gunko-looking servant in the flower room, and they were just kneeling down. You know, they were just hanging out. So I think there is a good chance that the Holy Knights really do not do anything unless Emu wants them to make a move. Which could be the cope about, like, Fisher Tiger. That could be the cope about Sabo's Reverie. It's just that the Holy Knights are not ordered to do anything, and they're just chilling at home. Or at least that's my headcanon, right? Because other than that, what are we saying? Like, the Holy Knights got blown back? The Holy Knights all just gave up without fighting Rocks? Because that'd be insane. So the chapter goes on, and it says that after the short clash, they both escaped together. Herald ends up asking Rocks which way was Elbaf, because he is really bad with directions, which, it's kind of funny. You know, people were talking about what would King Harald's role be within the Rocks Pirates if he joined, and people were like, yeah, you know, he'd be a navigator because he, you know, shared his navigational skills with those Wano samurai. Turns out that Herald is not a great navigator because he's lost as hell. He's like Zoro in that regard. So after that, Rocks told Herald that if they both survived, they should meet again, but Herald told Rocks that he would not get involved with a villain again. Then, Herald jumps off the red line, and Rocks was shocked to see how crazy Herald was. Like father, like son. Loki can survive a trip from the Sun Realm all the way down to the underworld. He did that as a baby. And now we have it. King Harald, the dad, able to jump off the red line all the way down to the ground floor and survive. Hyrule! Hyrule! What are we doing, man? I hate that I keep on holding this against Hyrule, but it just glares at me, dude. It's like Emo in the corner. It's just staring at me like the Green Goblin mask. Hyrule, where are your feet, buddy? Hyrule, what do you mean you are going to die? Dude, when Hyrule was coming down to the underworld, and he didn't use a sunstone or a lift or anything, Hyrule was giving his goodbyes. Hyrule said, I'm so sorry, guys. I guess this is where it ends. Bro, that can't be real, man. I believe in Hyrule. Despite me making fun of Hyrule every chance I can get, I do believe in that guy. I think by the end of Elbaf, he will show out, right? It's kind of like Usopp, right? Like, one day Usopp's gonna be great. That's how I feel about Hyrule. It's gotta come true, right? Surely the King Harald genes do not skip a generation that heavy. Oh my god. Oh my god. So, anyways, we go on and we see that the admiral that Rocks D Xebec did end up dying. Apparently, we don't get a description of him. We just hear about that from a narrator box. And because of all this, Rocks D Xebec does get a very high price on his head. We see his wanted poster, which is really cool, but we do not see his bounty, unfortunately. And then that is when we get the whole thing about him taking heavenly tribute. He also destroys the Gate of Justice, which, okay, you know, massive feat out of nowhere. Like, hey, this guy, yeah, he destroyed a giant, thick steel gate that you can't even see the top of on a normal day. Yeah, he did that. We also hear that Rocks D Xebec ended up getting a lot of his crew through Davy back fights. Yes, he is a Davy fight merchant, and I love to see it. I love that Davy back fights are coming back into the story. And, you know, going to Hachinosu, which I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but Hachinosu, currently, we heard that that is where Davy back fights originated. But turns out that that is not the case. It turns out that that actually comes from Rocks owning that island, because before Rocks took over, Hachinosu was actually an island for prisoners. Yes, that is where countries used to send their prisoners to die. But now that Rocks D Xebec has taken over it, present day, it is now known as the birthplace of Davy back fights, which is pretty cool. You know, we got the real lore to an island there. So, we cut over back to the present day. Well, present day, 48 years ago, and we see King Harald, Loki, and the Rocks Pirates are eating in the Elbaf Castle. And this is when Herald refuses Rocks D Xebec's offer to join his crew yet again.
King Harald
Turns over to Rocks' crew and he asks them, hey guys, why are you all following Rocks? And this is when we get the run through. This is when we get the character introductions. We got Shiki, whose epithet right now is the Yakuza. And he says, follow who? This idiot? Don't make me laugh. We're all on our own here. Even if Rocks drops dead, it won't make a difference. And yeah, I feel like that's how most people would feel if you lost to Rocks in a Daveback fight and you're forced to follow him. Yeah, you know, if Rocks dies, we can all just go back home and be on our merry way. Like, I get Shiki's mindset. Next up, we have Stussy, who is known as Bucking the Science Robber. She says, exactly. But there's something about his plan. It smells like a brilliant opportunity to get rich. And now we meet a brand new character named Don Marlon, the gangster from the West Blue. And Marlon says, have you heard of Hachinosu, the Island of Exile, also known as Pirate Island? It is the island where countries used to relocate ruthless criminals that their own prisons cannot handle. Don Marlon. Dude. Is this guy related to Capone Beige? Beige is from the West Blue. We heard that Beige took over a bunch of other mafias. He killed a lot of family leaders. And here we have it. We are finally meeting another gangster. Oda. What are we doing here? You know, Beige stocks? Are they going up today? I don't know, man. Don Marlon. Is he alive? Is he dead? Is he Beige's father? Is it just somebody that Beige interacted with in the past? I don't know, but I do love that we have this question now. Like, I love it when we're able to speculate over something we didn't see coming. Like, imagine this, right? We're getting a Rocks D Xebec flashback. How many people came into this chapter thinking we would get something related to Capone Beige? 0%. I'm gonna say it right now, I think 0%, man. Now we get Edward Newgate, Whitebeard's dialogue. He says, it was supposed to be an uninhabited island without food where you just wait for your certain death. And Whitebeard's epithet at the time was simply the pirate. And now we finally meet another character, Wang Ji, the iconic, legendary Wang Ji. And he says, but in recent years, those criminals are surviving and forming their own organizations. What do you think the reason is? And Wang Ji is known as the Pirate Guru. And we later get a description about Wang Ji, and they say that this guy, he looks like Caribou and Corbu. Maybe he's their father. That is what the leaker says. You know, we have to see the chapter for ourselves to make that deduction. But either way, dude, we finally got the Wang Ji reveal, and now we're relating him to a prominent character like Corbu and Caribou. Ooh, where's Oda going with this one? And what's interesting about Wang Ji looking like those two characters is that Caribou is currently in league with Blackbeard. You know, Caribou looks up to Blackbeard. Caribou's hero is Blackbeard. It kind of falls in line. So yeah, if you were to tell me that Wang Ji is their father, I can't really disprove it, right? That's one of those things, like, you can't really bat against it. Of course, I do have to see if they have that many similarities when we get the chapter, but for now, that's what we're running with, right? So now we meet another new character. Their name is Ganzu. Ganzu? Ganzui. I don't know. Gon something. He says, there are gold veins underneath Pirate Island. Some underground organizations caught a wind of that and lent the criminals a helping hand in becoming filthy rich. And he's known as the Smuggler. And we learn that Ganzui is actually the huge guy that was wearing full armor back at God Valley, and he was one of Moria's zombies in Thriller Bark. He was the guy with the golden armor, dude! I remember for the longest time, I mean, even I still make this mistake sometimes, but we thought that he was Wang Ji. You know, we saw the guy in armor, we were like, okay, that's Wang Ji. Right? We had nothing to really disprove it until we got the Rocky Port incident update. But yeah, we finally got the reveal on who that is, and he's a smuggler. Pretty cool stuff, man. I really do love that Oda, with these new characters, is adding so much lore in a way, right? We have the potential Capone Beige connection, the Caribou Corbu connection, and now we have Wang Ji and Gecko Moria. Like, how does this even happen, bro? Dude, Rocks is the gift that keeps on giving, brother. So, Herald says, stop that, I'm not going to join, I'm the king of a nation, to Rox's proposal again. And Rox says, that does not matter, Herald. Let's take the world. And they put the world in quotation marks, kind of like what happened with Katarina Devon and Van Augur to Saturn. And Loki says, the world. And the narrator says that later on, Loki realized that he has been saved. Yes, that is right. Rox's ambition was so grand, it inspired a kid Loki. Love to see it. And because of this exact wording, people are now bringing up the conversation of whether or not Loki will join the Straw Hats, become his own captain, or if he'll simply follow Blackbeard because Blackbeard wants to take the world as well. And I'll leave that up to you guys. What do you think about Loki and the world here? Who do you think Loki will join at the end of Elbaf, or end of story even? So now we have the last page of the chapter, and we see several ships approaching Hachinosu as the narrator talks about what happened 4 years later. The narrator says, 4 years have passed since then, with Herald turning down Rox's invitation every single time he offered it. And finally, Rox's plan, with an elite group of people who agreed with him, is about to be executed. So it looks like we're about to witness Rox taking over Hachinosu. And how this chapter ends makes me feel pretty confident that we will follow Rox for a little while. Maybe that's too hopeful. You know, maybe we're not going to get that. But the chapter ends with the Rox Pirates flag waving for the very first time. So yeah, it does feel like we're going to continue the Rocks D Xebec train. We're going to see him take over Hachinosu. We might even see a young Kaido. We might even see freaking God Valley. Oh, also, the treasure of Hachinosu. What is that? So now that we know that Hachinosu was a former prison camp turned into a gold mining operation, maybe the treasure of Hachinosu is literally just gold. I think that is an actual possibility, but I feel like there might be something more to that. I feel like gold might be too simple, right? Oh, celestial dragons took our gold. We got to get it back. Sure. I could see that being the case, but I feel like, you know, knowing One Piece, the treasure of Hachinosu is probably going to be a little bit more exuberant than just gold and money. But maybe that's just me. So yes, with that being said, though, guys, let me know what you thought about this chapter down below. How do you feel about King Harald now that we know that he is a Yonko caliber character? How do you feel about Rox and his swordsmanship? What do you think about these new characters that we met? Do you think there is a connection between these characters and Bej, Caribou, Corbu? I would love to hear all your thoughts down below, because in the next couple of days, we will be coming back and doing a comment read-through video. So if you comment down below, there's a good chance we'll tackle that comment. So again, thank you all for being here. I appreciate you guys spending your time. And that's pretty much it. Peace out, guys. Take care. Also, real quick, I do have to shell myself out real quick. You know, I always got to do this. But I do have a gaming channel here on the side on YouTube called Syvduck, so make sure to check that out. I also stream every other night on Twitch over at Syvduck as well. And I also have an anime reaction channel at Somnus Reacts. All of those will be linked down below. But yeah, now, you guys take care. Peace out.